Published May 16, 2014, 84% of college students own a smartphone. And it's second in most regularly used mobile device right behind laptops at 89%. And along with that, 74% of students use their smartphones for the main source of news. I personally am one of those people. I'd rather just have something to pull out my pocket real fast than sit down and have to set up my laptop or go to the lab. A bit more background. This past summer, the summer of 2014, Pacific University went under a website redesign, which made their website mobile responsive, which means if you pull out your phone, it fits to the size of your screen versus a desktop app, so you don't have, or a desktop website, so you don't have to scroll through. But there still are some features that aren't mobile responsive. Viewing your class schedule in Box Online, for example, was not mobile responsive. Trying to find the campus calendar for events that are going around on campus is in a completely separate place from the website itself. And viewing a campus map, there's a PDF online, but you also, for most part, have to print it out, and then you look like a tourist walking around and trying to figure out where you are. And then a bit more background, there's been desires for an app. This past year a lot, I've heard a lot of posts on Yik Yak, Confessions page, just talks around campus about desires for an app. So what was my proposed solution to this? Boxer app, a Pacific University mobile application. So the objective of my app and my senior project was to make an app that was easy to use for everyone and has easy access to all the important information that Pacific students would want. And Pacific University is a bit different than OSU, Washington State University, other apps where you can go to them and they kind of all look the same. There's a lot of mobile transportation schedules and food menus, but I feel like that wouldn't really fit in here at Pacific. So where to start something going like this? You want to go to the users. And although I am a Pacific student, I can guarantee my desires for an app are different than the student body. If it was my project for myself, I would have the hours for Taco Bell, McDonald's, things that I use on a daily basis versus things that might actually be useful to someone else. So you want to go to the students and actually see what they want. And try and have as little bias, personal bias, as possible, and try and make it as general so everyone can be at least a little bit happy with it. So to do that, I created a survey hosted on SurveyMonkey, which had 14 questions and it had about 30 responses. My questions range from what type of phone do you have to moving along, trying to find out as much students. And my last two questions, which were the most important questions of the survey, were what were the main features used from Pacific University, and then what do you want in an app? So the phone types for my users, I had 19 users that were iPhone users, I had 9 responses that were Android phone users, I had 1 Windows phone user, and you might have mentioned that I said there were 30. I also had 1 response that just said, what type of phone do you have? Their answer was yes. And this kind of like correlates with what they said, because I found out about 42% of smartphone users are iPhone users, so this kind of makes sense along with the data I got from my survey. So the second to last question was what are the main features you got from Pacific? And here I got a lot of Moodle, email, GoBoxer.com, the athletic site. And I asked this question before the main features that you want in an app because I wanted to see what people actually use. Because when you say what do you want in an app, as you'll see, there's a lot more responses. And I wanted to see what students actually use on a regular basis. So here's my list of what you want from an application. And here, it's a wide range of topics. There was weather, there was classroom numbers, there was Vault. And I wanted to try and limit this down to where if there's already apps for it, why reinvent the wheel? So for example, for email, there's already, since every account's a Google account, you can just sign into Gmail. So there was no need to include that in my app. For Moodle is a third-party client that we use, so there was no need to include that in my app. So from there, I compiled what I thought would be the most important features, and I went to paper prototyping. So what paper prototyping is you come up with how the app would look on a phone on paper. And you take this to students and you want to see how people react to it. And I tried basing my design around the material design patterns released by Google at Google I/O 2014. So what is material design? Material design is design patterns, suggestions, which Google released with Android 5.0 Lollipop. And it it gives apps that they feel they have a physical property to them, even though they're just software, they're on the 2D phone. It feels like objects are in a 3D space and there's lots of bold colors. It's very bright, pleasing to look at. So here are some examples. On the far left is an example from Google itself for a navigation drawer, which I'll go on and explain a bit more what a navigation drawer is. But as you can see, it's very bright, it's appealing to look at. In the center is an app called Today Calendar. It's one of the earliest adapters for material design, and it's widely regarded as one of the best adaptations for material design. And as you can see, everything's kind of laid out, there's lots of colors. And then on the right is a Reddit client, Relay for Reddit, which is widely regarded as one of the best Reddit clients. So I took these ideas, I took these apps, I looked at other apps, and this is what I came up with. So on the far left, that is my home screen. When you boot up the app, this is what you're welcome to. And the second left is a navigation drawer, which has all the main features, and I decided originally to have a calendar, a campus map, a class schedule, a food menu, and then campus news. In the center right is the calendar feature. On the far right is your class schedule. And then campus news and campus map. So after paper prototyping, I went and I did low fidelity testing. So this is, as I explained earlier, taking this and taking it to the users. And I was trying to record how people reacted to it, what their comments were, and what their questions were, and trying to adapt my project to see to what the people said. And for my low fidelity testing, I had about 20 testers, which I felt was the right number. I got a lot of response. I got a lot of positive feedback from the very beginning, which gave me a lot of confidence moving forward with my app. So high fidelity prototyping, I wanted to test it was close to final product of what the app would be. And I wanted to observe, how, again, like with low fidelity testing, how people reacted to this app. And I wanted to focus on ease of use, and my objective from high fidelity prototyping was to obtain quantitative and qualitative data, which I can look at and just give numbers to my success. So in my high fidelity prototype, I have three main things. I have use of fragments throughout the entire app. I have a navigation drawer, and this is an example of one highlighted in blue. And then I had a lot of card view layouts, which I'll go on and explain, which is highlighted in red. So what is a fragment? In Android, every screen you look at, for the most part, is an activity. If you push something and it goes to a new screen, that's most likely an activity. But when you create a new activity, a lot of the times, unless you put finish when your app, it gets pushed onto a stack. So when you hit back, that current activity is popped off the stack and you go back to the previous activity. And I wanted to try and prevent that, because if you want to go back a screen, I didn't want to or go back to a certain screen, I didn't want to have someone sit there and push the back button for however many new things they opened up. And fragments also make it easier to use a navigation drawer, which I'll explain what is next. So here's two examples of two different types of fragments. And if you're familiar with Android code, you see that they look pretty similar to what an activity is. On the left is my map fragment, and as you can see, there's an onCreate view, which is basically similar to onCreate in Android. And here's where you set all your variables and what is used in that fragment. And then there's also an onDestroy view, which is similar to onDestroy in Android. And the only place in my app where the back button actually works, where I thought it was logical to go back to the previous screen, is in my fragments, or my news fragment. If you're in a news story, if you hit back, you should logically be taken back to the story list. And it's kind of tricky to do that with fragments, because since they aren't pushed onto a stack, it just kind of goes away and another one takes its spot. I had to write this function, this onKey down, which basically is just detecting if the back button is pressed, you destroy the current view and then reinflate the news list. So my navigation drawers have been common in Android since about 2012, and it's a panel that comes in from the left-hand side and has the app's main navigation options. So here we have my navigation drawer and just the basic code, and as you can see, it's really not that tricky to get a navigation drawer to work. It's basically just a list view. If you're familiar with that, it's just a list of stuff, and you can define that stuff later. And I ended up defining that in my onCreate activity, since this is in every single one of my screens in my app. And the last thing I used was CardView, and CardView was a layout that was introduced with the API level 20, which was Android L Pre, which ended up being 5.0 Lollipop, released at Google I/O 2014. And it adds in the field of elevation. As you can see, there's this top card which feels like it's raised more than the bottom card, and that's just it looks like it's 2 pixels above the screen, and even though it's your flat device, it's the whole material design giving apps 3D space in a 2D world. And here are 2 examples of 2 different types of cards. On the left, we have my campus news story, and on the right, we have my campus calendar fragment. And it's basically just a layout. You just define it here, the elevation, corner card, and then you can add anything you want to this as you would with any other Android layout. Text views, image views, and it really gives a robust feel to them because you can do a lot with just one simple thing and make 2 cards look completely different. So I have a demo of my app, and as you can see, if it loads, in the bottom right, that is really blurry. You're welcome to a splash screen, and at this point, everything would be loaded that you would need, your schedule, the news. And as you can see, I swiped in. I don't know why it's so blurry. But this is my campus news, and then I go, there it goes. And as you can see, I'm swiping in, but you can also go up in the upper left-hand corner and tap that, and the navigation drawer will come out. So this is my campus map, and there's a marker on every building, and it says what the building is. And as you can see here, I'm actually that blue dot. I was filming this in the UC. So as you're walking around, it actually shows where you are instead of just walking around holding a piece of paper. You say, I need to get to Berglund Hall, and I know it's here, but I don't know where I am. You can just follow yourself as you're walking through. So here's my campus news, and as you can see, there's a list, and as you open one, the news story pops up. And then this is the only place where if you hit the back button, you go back to that news list. And then a couple stories, and then I swipe in, one more story. I swipe in for a navigation drawer. My campus schedule, this would be pulled from Boxer Online, your class schedule, your personalized schedule. And then settings are coming soon, and then just a little bit about the developer. So here's some side-by-side comparisons of my app. Here's my home screen. I actually decided to put a little color to it, put a picture of Boxer statue in it. Just added the letter, added a couple more days. Originally, I was going to have this be compatible with all 3 campuses, Forest Grove, Hillsborough, and Eugene. But I decided just to focus it down on the Forest Grove campus. Here's my navigation drawer, and as you can see, it's pretty similar to my original design. I did end up scrapping the food menu option. But other than that, I feel like it really turned out pretty close to my paper prototype. My campus calendar, the schedule, campus news, and then the campus map. So my high fidelity prototyping results, I had 10 testers, and I gave them a pre and post survey. And I asked some basic information at first. What type of phone do you have? How familiar are you with Android? Just stuff completely unrelated from my app itself. So 6 of my users were iPhone users. I had 4 Android users and 1 Windows Phone user, pretty similar to my results from the survey. And all but 1 of my users had used an Android device previously. And all my testers said that they believed that Pacific needed an app itself. So some common problems that I noticed throughout my testing was that none of my users actually brought in the navigation drawer from the left-hand side. A lot of them looked at it, were like, had a questioning look, and then like, oh, in the upper left-hand corner, and they tapped that, and it brought in the navigation drawer instead of swiping in. And I thought that was very interesting. I know myself personally, if I have an app, I automatically swipe in whether or not I know there's a navigation drawer because it's pretty common. And a lot of my users said they desired an iPhone app. And I had a lot of questions about that. And I decided just to go strictly for Android for a couple reasons. The big one being I've had experience in Android before. It's my platform of choice. As you can see, I have Android Watch, I have an Android phone. Android is just a critical part of my life, and it's something I want to go in. Plus, it's open source, which is gives you the coder a bit more power with what they can do. So my proposed solution for the users typing in for the navigation drawer was on the left-hand side is my current activity bar. And as you can see, it's kind of bland. And on the right was actually what I was trying to go for my paper prototype, a red bar across the top. And as you can see, there isn't, on the left-hand side, there's just 3 lines which identify there's a navigation bar. And then with But if you have this button up here, you can see, oh, that's actually a button, let's see what it does, instead of trying to look around and trying to see where you should hit next. So some common requests about my app. I had a lot of people wanted to add their own events to the schedule. And that was something on my end that I was thinking, instead of just calling it a schedule, I should have said class schedule. And a couple reasons behind that. Since there's already scheduling apps, as I said earlier, you don't want to reinvent the wheel if there's something that already exists. You want to create something new. And I didn't have this intention of being just your schedule, or your personal schedule. I wanted this to be your class schedule. And I got a lot of directly for frequently used offices, for example, CPS, TIC, PIC, CLIC, anything else that ends in IC. And that's actually something that I might go on and add in later, because that's actually a really good idea that I really like, because that's something that'd be useful to me in the future. And I got a lot of positive feedback. One of the biggest things I got was, it'd be useful for undergraduate, graduate, and prospective students, since just for Pacific students in general, instead of just undergraduate, with the Boxed Online schedule, with the campus news. It would help a lot of people, especially with graduate students and off-campus students, keep up to date with what's going on. I know personally living off campus, I miss a lot of events that are going on campus because I don't see events, posters, walking around campus, hanging outside my dorm room. So the campus calendar or event calendar would actually really help me personally, along with other graduate level students. And for prospective students, they can just download this free app and they can keep up to date with news that's going around campus. When they come to campus and they get lost, they can walk around instead of holding up like a tourist, a PDF, a paper of the campus map. They can just walk around their phones like everyone else does. Doesn't matter that they're a new student. And as I said earlier, it helps with off-campus students know what's going on. So the results of my testing at the end of my post-testing, I had my testers rate my app on 5 stars based on ease of use, features, design, and overall rating. So my ease of use, I had an average rating of 4.85 out of 5 stars. For my features, a 4.14 out of 5 stars. Design, a 4 out of 5, and an overall rating of 4.21. So a bit of review for my app. This isn't an everyday app. This isn't something that you wake up in the morning and check as you might with social media, Snapchat, YouTube, whatever you might wake up and check. This isn't designed to be one of those. It's more of it's helpful certain times of the year. In the beginning of each semester, as you get a new class schedule, it can help you get to your right classes so you don't have that awkward show up to the wrong class in the first day of class and then you have to leave in the middle of lecture. And it's useful for all students. Although I kept undergraduate mostly in mind, in the end it ended up being useful for graduate and prospective students. And overall, I thought the project was a success. My ease of use, which is the main thing I was going for, was a 4.85 out of 5 stars, almost a perfect rating, and I was ecstatic when I found out my numbers. Future of this project, it would be possible to implement a full app and actually give this to Pacific itself. However, there would need to be a lot of work that I need to put in. For example, to get the campus news, I would need to have an RSS feed set up on the website so I could just use an API to pull the news stories as they're uploaded dynamically instead of having to hand enter in every story, because that would just be a pain for me or the person who was maintaining the app. And I need to be able to pull events from the EMS scheduling. At this point, I'm not sure how stuff is stored in there. It could be XML, it could be something completely different, I don't even know. But if I knew how to get access to that, I could dynamically include that in my event calendar. And I'd also need access to the database tables to be able to pull, users would log in the first time they have the app, and then they would automatically download their schedule. So acknowledgements, I'd like to thank my capstone advisor, Shireen, for helping me out through this entire year. My academic advisor, Doug, helped me out through these past 4 years. Stack Overflow, if you have anything about coding, if it's not on there, you're in trouble. If it isn't on there and you ask and no one can help you, you're in even bigger trouble. And, overall, I'd like to thank my friends. They've helped me a lot in these past 4 years for my rants, my high points, my low points. So thank you. Any questions?
So I'm assuming that you went through and used the guidebook application specifically implemented for Pacesetters.
Yes.
And I'm curious how that influenced the development of your own application.
It didn't, because at that point I already had my design sets. And I found the guidebook, someone just mentioned it in passing one day, like, oh yeah, Pacific already has an app. I was just like, what? So I went and looked at it, and that was designed strictly for Pacesetters, so wouldn't really help, even though it said like Pacific University, it didn't really help anyone other than the people that are here for Pacesetters.
Well, I mean, if you don't mind a follow-up question, I guess what I was talking about was the ease of use was the big issue that you had with your application. Is that was what you were really trying to go for with this one? And I was curious how you felt about the Pacesetters app and its ease of use, and if that specifically was influenced on your design.
No, not really, because Guidebook is something where it's kind of just plug in information and it just spits something out. A lot of companies use Guidebook. I've used Guidebook for conventions I've gone to, and they all kind of just look the same on the base level. So I didn't really think about that much when I was designing mine.
Yeah. So do you think Pacific is going to try to talk to you about actually turning this into an app, or do you think they're just gonna?
That's a good question. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd be willing to talk to them about it, but that'd be 3 to 5 year commitments supporting it, because no app's perfect. Every app has its faults, and you have to update it as new, especially with software that moves so fast, and Android especially. You'd have to update it to keep up to date with the latest versions as they come out every 2 to 3 years. So it is a possibility. It is something I've thought about, but I have to do more thinking about it if that offer arises. Cool.
So with your newsfeed, would you, when they sign in on the app, would you have it, because when you go to the website, you can go to current undergraduate, you can go to graduate, you can also go to future students, and there's different news feeds and different articles that go to those news feeds. So would you have it be that when they log in, it would indicate whether or not, or which section I guess they would fall under, and then have it upload to that specific news feed, or would you go to a general one?
When I was putting in my news, I didn't even choose a certain one. I just went to featured news for Pacific, and that's just where I pulled the news from. But that is something that could be done. I'm sure there's something in the database tables that indicate whether you're undergraduate, graduate. And then if you don't log in, you can just default to Perspective. And that could tailor a news feed to what type of student you are. So, question.
Yeah, so now that you've done the Android side of it, if you were to continue this and make an iOS version, what kind of challenges would you face in the direction of that?
Learning a whole new language. I've looked at some Objective-C code, and it looks completely different from Java. But it would be done. I might even look, because there's compilers out there where you can write your design in JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and then it compiles it for both Android and iPhone. I haven't looked much into it, but I know they're out there, so that could be something if I were to develop this for the school, I might look into trying to just do one for both.
And would that differ for Windows phones?
Windows Phone is out of question. Windows Phone, we all know that.